walking through Walmart, a kid would see more depictions of magic and mythology than your average person probably would in a lifetime.
Initiate diary.
So, with all of these options to choose from, how do you pick the mythology? Because you have to worship a transpersonal other. You got to have a transpersonal other to submit to.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you don't have a god to submit to, your masculinity is just going to run amok. It's just you're going to have all this progression. To what end, you won't know. And then eventually, even if you're successful, you'll say, this is pointless, and you'll be miserable. And if you're a failure, you'll just be like, well, I'm a failure by all standards of progression, so I'm miserable.
So you're saying through story and mythology, you need to understand ideals greater than yourself, or else you kind of have nothing to base your actions and your stories of life off of.
Yeah.
So they would lack continuity and direction. Like, it would be kind of like a bad movie. You know, a bunch of random things are kind of happening, and yeah, there's some sad parts, there's some happy parts, but it's really hard to discern any kind of point from it.
I think most people, myself included, their lives are kind of a bad movie. That's a great way of putting it.
Mm.
Like, would you want to watch the story of your life? Parts of it.
If it were edited properly.
If it were, okay. Great editors.
If you let me edit it, I could probably make it pretty cool. And if I could just tweak a couple things here and there, you know, just a little.
Can I ask what you would tweak?
No.
The biggest thing I'm trying to do in all of this is to define the masculinity, because so far, nobody has done a job that has been sufficient for me.
A job doing what? Can you be a little more concise with that?
Yeah, a job describing how I should live in this world as a man.
Oh, okay. So what is interesting is we, as Westerners, Americans especially, I mean, what's America's main export? It's culture. It's mythology. It's dazzle. It's the Avengers and all this kind of stuff. Children are swimming in it growing up. But do they even really know what it is or what it means, what they could be doing with it? I mean, you see some of the lamest marketing, like, you too could be a superhero.
Yep.
Do this thing that we want you
Pick
to
up
do.
trash on the highway.
And it's just so lame. And I don't know if you've ever heard Alan Moore rant about how the whole superhero thing just needs to go away. That it's keeping people sort of mythologically infantile. Like, yes, this idea of there are superhumans that save the day keeps us kind of trapped in this loop where we're not really like progressing where we should be. So that's why he writes so many like more like out there stories. So of course, like The Watchmen, you know, where he really confronts that head on, like, hey, very much like Game of Thrones, it's like gray characters. It's not just the good guys, then they have superpowers, and then there's the bad guys, and they have superpowers too. But their superpowers are not as good as the good guys' superpowers.
But they have money, lots of it. Their powers aren't as powerful, but they have lots of money.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's something there, but I guess my point is that does get old, does it not? I mean,
well, the problem is that a superhero is just not, it's not old enough. It's as a symbol, it's just, it is not old enough to be a part of us as a people. Like, for example, X marks the spot. All right?
mm-hmm.
That has been, you can see that, I think, in 3 or 4 different cultures, and it goes back to 2,000 or 3,000 BC.
Mm-hmm.
The X symbol is just there, right? The circle with the dot in the middle, it's just there. There are certain symbols that are just, they've been around for so long, and the superhero thing is just kind of like a crappy, it's more of a cheap version, because we don't know that those symbols aren't just necessarily going to stick around for forever. And my problem with the superhero thing, really, to the extent that you cannot create a good villain, you also cannot create a good protagonist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, your evil inside of you is just, and in many instances, it's more pronounced than the good. So why are we so inept as a culture with making good villains?
And it is very irritating when you have a bland. I know why. I have a theory. I don't know if.
I'm gonna go for it. We're having a legitimate conversation.
Sure. For propaganda purposes.
Okay. Like Jordan Peterson becoming a villain for the 12
Two-dimensional villains. Hey, ideologues that worship us and only believe what we tell you. Look who the new bad guy is.
This guy cuts down forests.
He is so bad. Oh, and then never mind all the bullshit that we get away with constantly. If only some superheroes would come and save the day. It's infantilization. It is. It absolutely is. If you remove nuance from your villains, then your heroes are basically villains too. It's just villain versus villain. Where's the goodness?
Where's
How
the
could
humanity?
there possibly be any?
Yeah,
It's just a bunch of nonsense.
Right.
You know? Game of Thrones was great because it dealt with nuance. It dealt with great characters. You got to really hate the Lannisters early on. I did. But then slowly, with the exception of Cersei, and even Cersei a little bit, kind of start to feel for him. And you can kind of get it. You may even find yourself rooting for Jaime at some point.
Yeah.
After a while. Takes a while. Definitely takes a while.
Sure.
But it's
Sure.
there. That's interesting. And it's more true to life. And it's more true to mythology. I'm quite sure if you were to look at Greek or Roman, Hindu, Norse, there's a lot. It definitely deals with a lot of that. There's kind of like good and evil. There's not just like, here's the guy who was good and here's the guy who was bad. I mean, they're kind of.
No, monotheism is pretty much the first religion that has this. But the problem is that if God is the totality of all things and your God character is only good, then he's not all things. If something is pure good, then it can't understand.
That's the catch.
Yeah, it can't understand the evil in something.